I'd like to introduce my panel first of all. On my extreme right, Nick Mirsky, the head of documentaries for Channel 4. Joe Clinton-Davis, I'm sure you know all these faces. Joe Clinton-Davis, controller of Factual for ITV. Patrick Holland, the brand new, not yet in post, head of documentary commissioning for the BBC. And Celia Taylor, who is head of non-scripted commissioning for the Sky Entertainment channels. So those are our panellists. Now, during the course of this hour and a half, we're going to be looking at quite a few clips, and we're going to be talking about how the craft of documentary is changing and looking at what these four people are doing to try and punch through and get what we would call important subjects on the screen in a crowded marketplace and look at what their competitors are doing. We're going to look at whether or not the broadcasters are doing better reflecting a modern, diverse Britain, and we're going to look at presenters as well, and then we're going to ask you for your points of view. So very quickly, I'm going to ask the four panellists to, first of all, show us a clip of something that is either untransmitted or is at the point of being transmitted. I think one of the shows we're going to look at is being transmitted for the first time tonight, so hot off the press. Joe, can I ask you to kick off? And I know we're making an exception for you because you're showing us two little clips.
I'm so greedy. I'm showing you two little clips. The first is from something in production called Saved, and it's a sort of really broad mainstream subject that, you know, we have to cater for a very broad demographic. It's got sort of drama values at its core, which I think is what ITV is about, and an emotional heart. It had a sort of long gestation. I won't bore you with that, but we can talk about it afterwards. And the other one is just to show about the range of what comes under documentary. So Saved at one end, and something like TripAdvisor's, which is as yet, you have to imagine it with Johnny Vegas's voice on it. It's a new format from Studio Lambert, because we're a sort of broad church and we reflect those sort of polarities and much else in between.
Thank you. So, I mean, two very different shows. So just briefly, Joe, for now, what is it that makes those shows, what is it about the way they're treated that makes them ITV?
I think it's about the breadth of appeal, and I think it's about an emotional core, and that emotional core can be that sort of drama feel of something like Saved, which began life as Saved by a Stranger. I think it still looks at it's layered. It looks at the sort of ethical issues. Would you give up your sort of life potentially to save somebody else whose life is incredibly endangered? And there's an emotional core in the sort of lighter way of travel guides or TripAdvisors. But I think what they both have is this sort of breadth of appeal, and that's incredibly important for ITV, and yet they're both about something. They both have an authenticity. There's a relatability to them. So, you know, we can all imagine, my God, you know, if your boat capsized, well, your boat, you know, some people in television have boats. If your boat capsized, you know, would somebody come and rescue you? That's very universal. And something like, you know, we all do travel. Some people in this TripAdvisor show don't go abroad. We review British holidays. It's based on that authentic
so it's a sort of
peer review thing. It's about one man's meat. So it's a relatability, and it's that breadth of appeal.
And just last question, on the Saved, do the people who've been rescued meet the people who
Well, we started with a pilot
rescuers?
where they did meet them, but actually you learn that creating reunions, unless it's something like Long Lost Family, where the reunion is so truly authentic, it's extraordinary, you can't interfere with that, is quite
So it's not,
difficult.
in a sense, the same format as Long Lost Family?
It's not. And we did a pilot where, I don't think I'm telling tales out of school, where we did reunite the saved and the savee, if you like, the saver, and it didn't have that emotional impact. So we went back to the drawing board and we thought, actually, you can do something much simpler and just as dramatic. And, you know, and I think it's effective.
Okay, thanks. Celia, I'm going to come to you next. Tell us what you're going to show us, because your show has just started, hasn't it?
It's called Kings and Queens of Speech. And I suppose it feels Sky because it's about school, which is something that's incredibly mainstream. But more importantly, it's a show that you can't watch it without laughing and crying, which is always kind of a sweet spot for us at Sky. It's about a charity called Debate Mate who go into schools and try and suck up the naughty or the kids that are about to fall out of the system. And through the power of learning how to debate, you kind of see them blossom. So it's a big emotional journey, and for us it's important because each episode is a closed ep, so each week you see a different school, so you can watch the whole thing and the team's journey to a final at the House of Lords, but you can also watch them as closed eps, which is quite important for us.
Yeah. Wow, it's obviously a series with a lot of emotional potential. I noticed it's made by 2-4. Was it something, were you after that same sort of emotional hit as Educating Yorkshire and Essex and things?
Yeah, we were, but I think, I mean, you know, yes, obviously we were. And there's some great stories. That little boy who says, "Nobody listens to me," is an amazing story, and actually just it makes me cry just thinking about it. He's extraordinary. And he's now gone on and done TV appearances and all that kind of stuff, and this is a little boy who wouldn't even really walk into a classroom on his own. So it's really powerful stuff.
And it gives a light to the fact that, you know, never work with children and animals, because children are great on television, aren't they?
And also we wanted to do something that was effortlessly diverse. That's very important to us. You know, we've done a lot of talking about that at Sky, and so it felt like a territory where we could absolutely have a really diverse cast in terms of race and ethnicity, but also in socio-economic backgrounds as well, without having to sort of point the finger at it. And it's funny and it's moving. So it's sort of.
And how many episodes?
There's 8 episodes, and the final is in the House of Lords, and we got Melvin Bragg to introduce it. So, and the kids had the most extraordinary experience. So they've gone from being kids that really probably weren't going to get through their GCSEs to actually being greeted in the House of Lords. So it felt very modern Britain. We're quite keen to do something about social mobility, and this again felt something that we could, for Sky, you wouldn't think that we'd be interested in social mobility and all those things. But
it sort of does feel more BBC in a funny sort of way.
Yeah, but I think it's the heart and the warmth and the big emotional stuff that we absolutely milk makes it feel right for us.
Okay, thank you very much. Nick, you're going to show us something that's due for transmission probably in the autumn, which you've only just finished filming. Do you want to just introduce it for us?
I suppose the reason I chose this clip is because we do a lot of documentary, a huge amount of documentary, which is pure documentary. But what we're increasingly seeing on Channel 4 is an appetite for constructed factual that's really authentic, that feels like it captures experience. That in a slightly different way. And some of our fastest growing factual series are series like The Island or Gogglebox or First Dates. We're interested in that space, and we're particularly interested in that space where one can bring documentary skills, documentary expertise and instincts into more constructed spaces. And this is something that Amy's been looking after, which is made by the team who made The Island. It's called Hunted. And it's going to be going out in the autumn, and what it is really is we're living in a world which is we're under surveillance more and more, and it's about that idea that can we exist off grid? Can we escape the scrutiny and the eye of the authorities? And what it is, there are a number of fugitives in this series seeing if they can spend 28 days off-grid, or up to 28 days off-grid without being caught.
I think I'm right in saying this was a co-commission with Features, so it was developed jointly.
With our formats department.
Formats. Yeah. So is that the way of the future, do you think? We'll be doing more collaborations?
Yeah, we do collaborate quite a lot. We work across departments. We work as a team across departments in a number of commissions, and I think that's likely to continue, and more of that is likely to happen.
They're very fortunate, actually. With the formats, the features, the docs, the arts, the history department all into one.
All in one. But it does obviously, as you said earlier, have a very kind of important underlying purpose about surveillance society. So is this the way forward to try and get at those difficult subjects?
Well, I think sometimes there are subjects that you can't cover. I mean, access is brilliant, and we always want great access documentaries and great access series, but there are areas that are actually better served by coming up with constructed ideas that can illuminate that, and this is one of those spaces.
Okay, well that brings me perfectly to Patrick Holland, because Patrick's going to show a clip which is very much about access. But before we do that, can I just say welcome, and I'm sure you're all very happy to welcome Patrick as the new head of documentaries. When do you actually start at the BBC? Because you're not in post yet.
So it's either going to, hopefully it's going to be by the beginning of July.
Oh, so pretty soon?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to spend the rest of this session justifying things you had nothing to do with.
Absolutely nothing to do with whatsoever.
Fair enough. Okay, well, you're going to show us a clip from the Met, which starts tonight, I think, doesn't it?
Does.
Do you want to just tell us a bit
tonight
about it?
on BBC One. Hello, everybody. I wanted to be on the panel today, even though Maxine has been as the acting head of commissioning. But just because I wanted you all to be able to put a face to the name and say hello, but also just to say that, I mean, in terms of things like the Met is has been a long time in the making. It's a hugely ambitious, as Nick was saying, that, you know, one of the ways in which we look as documentary commissioners, the BBC looks as documentary commissioners to tell the big, important stories of our time is through access. And you know, access to the biggest police force in the country, in the biggest, you know, one of the biggest cities in Western Europe, one of the most ethnically diverse cities in the world, that the policing within London is a huge subject, and it's a subject that I think that as the Met, as an access piece vertically, top to bottom through the organisation, it feels very distinctly BBC One in its tone and its scope and in its ambition. So I wanted to.
So should we have a look at it,
yeah.
and then we can talk a bit more? Can we see that clip, please? I mean, obviously, it must have been a really difficult series to shoot, and I hate to raise this, what with you being brand new and all, but on Saturday in The Guardian, it was really savage by Peter Preston, because he said it was...
Simon Jenkins, wasn't it?
Was it?
Oh, I don't know.
One of them, anyway.
Yeah.
You know, who knows what that agenda was, but at the end of the day, what they were arguing was that, you know, you had the access, but it was a little bit of a cozy up. I mean, do you think that's unfair?
Well, I think anyone who watches that documentary will not feel like it's a cozying up with the police, that what happens within it is that you are taken to the heart of some very, very senior meetings with some very, very senior police officers who are running the Metropolitan Police, who uncomfortable truth after uncomfortable truth comes bombarding into their media room, and it puts you in a place where you think you're inside the organisation. You know, it's unapologetically a documentary about the world from the Met's point of view. But at the same time, as filmmakers, I think they've done an extraordinary job where you feel that you're in a place where they are at you're receiving what's happening in the world from their point of view, but at the same time, you're seeing all of the inherent problems that they have within their institution, which are not, I mean, it's certainly not given as a puff piece by the film. There's very, very uncomfortable access that you're taken to. So I wouldn't agree with that on that film at all.
People can find out for themselves.
Absolutely.
Watching tonight at 9
Yeah.
o'clock. Okay, well, I want to move the discussion on a little bit to talk about how the craft of documentary is changing. And I don't know if you spotted the deliberate mistake, as it were, but in that entire selection, I don't believe there was a single rig show. Now, a year ago, people were talking about rig shows all the time, 2 years ago as well. Celia, I mean, is the rig show, has it had its moment, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think there's some brilliant rig shows out there. I mean, the fact that most of them seem to be on Channel 4, maybe that's beginning to feel like it's getting, because that's, you know, you get a lot of it. And I think whenever you get a lot of one type of thing, you start to get fatigue.
It's not something you've been tempted to...
Well, we've done one, and I would do one again. I think it's, you know, when you feel that you're in a mature market with a technique or a method of storytelling, you need to be mindful of how you take it on to the next level, because I think if you just continue doing what everybody else is doing, in the end, one of us or all of us will become a cropper.
And the rig shouldn't be, it should be an adjunct, shouldn't
Yeah.
it? I mean, I think it's about what's the best way of exploiting and exploring your content. And content, I mean, it's such a cliche, is king. And if the rig is the best way to access that, that's great. But you don't set out, we don't set out to say, oh, let's do a rig show. It's about what's the story, first and foremost, what's going to be the dramatic hook for the audience, and then what is the best method of capture.
There are certain parameters of what you need to make a rig show work. You need a building that stuff happens. So, you know,
You can't apply it to everything.
You can't apply it to everything.
But,
have there been brilliant rig shows? Yes. And will there probably be another one coming? Yes. But
it does also require a very different set of skills. I know, Nick, I mean, obviously, you know, the home of the rig show is Channel 4. And rather interestingly, I note that Channel 4 is running a sort of training scheme for cutting-edge directors, because presumably you can be brilliant on a rig show, but you need some help to become a director. You know, is that, are we having to do that because of the changing nature of people's skills?
Do you know what, I think if we go back a step, I think what all advances, I suppose if there are advances in documentary making, they're nearly always advances which help us communicate the drama of what the real world is like. And they're steps. All advances in documentary seem to be about making the stories more authentic, closer to real experience. And there's no doubt the rig is an amazing instrument to enable that to happen. It means there isn't the intrusion of a director present, and you can get extraordinary stories that way. But it's a way of making a film, and you make a judgment, and you make a judgment about what is the best way of telling that story. I think the rig can still continue to open up and help you tell stories in different ways. Some of you might be booked in to see The Tribe later on in Sheffield, actually later on today, which is, it feels like a turn of the wheel in terms of anthropology television. I think it can still open up and feel fresh and different, but you make a judgment about what's right in in different spaces. As far as directors are concerned, I think actually what it is there's an increasing appetite for factual, and therefore we're very conscious of the fact that there was fresh and there was first cut, and that was helping people get their first foot on the ladder. And actually that training scheme for cutting edges is to help people take that next step. Some of them will have quite a developed rig experience, which will have given them lots of cutting room experience, storytelling experience, and that.
I think that's the issue. That when we all grew up, you directed lots and lots of stuff, and you cut lots and lots of stuff. And I do think there's been a whole generation of documentary or factual people who haven't had the benefit of those hours and hours in a cutting room. It's fine, you know, you shoot masses of material, but it's only when you actually have to cut it do you really hone your directing skills.
So in a way, is the edit producer becoming the more creative of the two roles?
Well, I don't know about...
Or the editor.
I don't know about creative, but I think that it's hard to expect young directors because they don't have that time in the edit, and that's really, you learn so much. I grew up making lots of 5-minute films, and that's how I learned how to shoot and how to direct, because I learned by making loads of mistakes, but fortunately on short things. So I think I always feel like a wet dinosaur when I talk about this, but I do think that has changed the career progression for factual people, particularly if you want to be a director.
I think there's also the sense that with the rig, and I've never made a rig, but as a watcher of the rig programs, and also of employing lots and lots of people who've worked on the rig, that, and I don't know if it's necessarily just an issue of the rig, but that sort of sense of that the big decisions have been made in terms of why are we making this, where are we, what's the purpose of the, you know, what are we interrogating the content, that's sort of been central. If you make a big rig series, you're centralising a lot of those decisions, whereas I think that it can often feel that that ability on location to produce and to ask the question, why are we here, what are we doing? And it's an issue with access, you know, access documentaries in general, that rather than just feeling that it's enough to open the door and, oh, we're here, you know, we're in this world, we can just start making the documentary now. There has to be that sense of that interrogation of purpose and of getting the producer back in.
An authorial view that doesn't necessarily, I mean,
yes,
you know,
this is the point, isn't it?
There's something about an authorial view that, you know, on ITV an authorial view is different perhaps from Channel 4. But you do feel when you're in the hands of a skilled director, you know, that you're getting a vision, and that vision adds an extra layer to the content, and somebody who really appreciates how to sort of squeeze every ounce of emotion and journalism out of that. And that's a really important function.
But is that because, you know, in a way, as you say, the decision-making may be centralised, but the craft skills are fragmenting in a way, so that you don't have the sort of emerging, the star director, the person whose authorial voice is the thing that, you know, brings people to a subject. I mean, Jo, would you
Well,
agree?
I'm a great believer in, you know, absolutely, if a rig was the best way to commission a show and centralise the decision-making, and we've done some rigs, happy to do that. And it's about a mixed ecology of approaches and types of programming, as our sort of clip reel has shown. But, you know, thank goodness we had Stuart Cabb doing The Mafia with Trevor McDonald. You might have had a different show if Stuart hadn't directed that, or Carl Hindmarsh, who's doing 7/7, or Leslie Woodhead, The Day He Dropped the Bomb. You can have authorial directors who've got a lightness of touch as well. We've got a 100-year-old Driver's Ride again. It's a gorgeous film. I absolutely love it. And sort of perhaps not in that sort of upper echelon of sort of well-known directors, but somebody who's just got a vision and flair that adds something extra to the piece. And I say hurrah for that. And it's part of what we do when we work with producers, is to cast the directors as well as cast the characters. And that's a real pleasure.
Mm. Okay, well, just finally then, before we leave this topic and go on to the next one, I mean, presumably, Nick, the reason, you know, you wouldn't be doing a training course for emerging cutting-edge directors if you didn't perceive that there was a problem.
Yeah, well, we definitely want more. There's definitely an appetite for more single documentaries on Channel 4. We definitely want to build up the cadre of documentary makers on Channel 4, single documentary makers or short series documentaries, and we feel it's a way to help find that next generation of top and award-winning documentary makers. So we're committed to that, and that's part of it.
New directors break through and are able to, you know, when Jessie Versluis made her first film, when Nick Holt made the first film, it's so exciting. It's such an exciting moment when someone goes from being promising to being an out-and-out talent that you think, here's a new voice.
And you can't just prescribe that. That's going to happen.
But at the same time, I think what Nick's doing is terrific, and it's certainly something that I'd like to look at the BBC, is how that we do all we can to find, nurture, and progress those people that are at that level where those distinctive voices are coming from.
Do you know what I think the key thing, even when I was at the BBC 3-4 years ago, the number of people I would get knocking on my door saying, I've made a first cut, I've made a fresh, what next? Because actually that first film isn't for everyone. One or two people will make that film and that will launch them. But there's a lot of people who make quite a good fresh film or quite a good first cut film, but not necessarily be on everybody's list of single documentary makers. And actually what this scheme is designed to is just to help lift people a stage further. And also give them access to top documentary makers who are all involved in that training scheme. So we're drawing in some of the most talented documentary makers around, and that they're investing in that scheme too.
Okay, thanks a lot. Well, I want to sort of move on now and talk a little bit about how you're all kind of fighting for your space in a very crowded prime time marketplace, and what it is that you're doing to make sure that your output is distinctive and channel defining, because good documentary can be channel defining for any channel, which brings me naturally, I guess, to Benefit Street, which I think it would be fair to say is channel defining for the channel. You're on Mark 2. Is this a case of sort of, you know, milking a topic? Because there have been lots of people trying to emulate Benefit Street as well, haven't there?
I feel it's a really, really important subject for, I mean, especially today in Britain. Poverty, benefits, it's a really, really important subject. It's absolutely right that Channel 4 should be making programmes in that space. So I feel it's right that we're there, and I feel it's important that we're there.
And in Mark 2, which you know, I've watched several of them, the first episode you spent a lot of time focusing on how the media had given the programme a hard time, if you like. But in subsequent episodes, there have been some intensely moving sequences as well.
The last episode of Benefit Street was an extraordinary, completely extraordinary film, which those of you that haven't seen, I would recommend you see it. It's quite an exceptional film. I mean, I think the series was really good. The last film, extraordinary.
But just going back to the point about, it was fantastic, but going back to the point about the first episode, you know, are we sort of slightly television eating itself when we start to put, you know, the response to a programme into the programme itself?
Because of what happened during the first series of Benefit Street, the level, the activity on the street, the politicians, the local press, the national press, it became quite a defining story for those people who lived on the street. And what we were doing was reflecting what happened to that community of people over a period of some months. And because it happened and because it reflected their experience, it felt right to include some of that in the first episode.
And in terms of other things that you're doing to fight for that space and to define the channel's output, there have been some other interesting projects recently. I was thinking about the UKIP, the First 100 Days, using drama documentary, Paedophile Hunters. These are programmes that push sort of the ethics of documentary making to the limit.
We certainly we're certainly always keen to have a number of, especially a number of single films that are quite spiky, that make people think, that make people sit up, that are thought-provoking, provocative in a thought-provoking way. So those feel very Channel 4, it feels a very Channel 4 thing to be doing. We were always keen to have programmes like that.
Okay.
Paedophile Hunter, an absolutely exceptional film that I'm sure a lot of you have seen.
So, Patrick, my question to you is, would you have liked to see Benefit Street on the BBC?
I think there is definitely... I think that, yes, definitely, but I don't know, not necessarily in the same form. I think that the subject matter and the fact that there was that was a way of bringing a large audience, or asking the audience to say, look at this major social issues, one of the major social issues of our time. This is a way of bringing an audience to that street and asking questions and seeing and exploring the lives of the people on that street. So absolutely. I don't think it would have been done. I think it would have been done in a slightly different form. And we wouldn't do it now because it's already been done. It's been done on Channel 4. But as a way of bringing an audience, then definitely. But I don't think that it would have been commissioned. I wouldn't have been fighting for its commission on the basis of this will make a stink. I think that what you would commission it on the basis of this is a major social issue. This is a really good production company. They've got a really good take on this. Let's commission this series.
Okay, well, you've brought along, and we're going to show a couple more clips in the next few minutes. Nick has only brought one clip, so I'm not missing him out, I promise. But Patrick, you want to show us a clip of something called Desmond the Farmer, which for you is, you feel as being in a way.
Well, no, this is not. This is part of, BBC Two has got, Kim's been in running BBC Two now for about a year, she's, an exciting new controller who is, that there's lots of new thinking that's coming to the channel. And one thing I wanted to show you, just because it's new and it's actually just some rushes, but I just wanted to show you because it's for the 10 o'clock slot, which there's an appetite to try and bring a different tone to that slot. That it's the time when the news is on, and that so what it is, and it's actually something that we developed and got commissioned at Boundless, which is why I know about it. Which is it's a character-driven documentary about a farmer called Desmond who lives in Norfolk. He lives in a crumbling country pile. He hasn't got enough money. He runs a local shoot. The second homeowners don't like him.
It's good.
Your past is going to come back and haunt you, Patrick, in this new job.
I can tell you, I've seen it.
Well, should we have a quick look at
yes,
it, and then we can talk? I mean, just quickly, it looks on the surface of it very traditional BBC documentary.
I think that it's the character of Desmond will lead the documentary. And it's the character of Desmond in the same way that Nev in the call centre, or that what you're doing is rather you're saying that here's a great individual, and this is not a 9 o'clock sort of like 6-part documentary series. This is a different flavour at 10 o'clock, which just says this is a popular character-led documentary, which brings a different tone and takes you into lots and lots of different issues, but in a very secondary way. That And so I think that, yes, you know, it's not taking us to a place we haven't been to before, but I think that Desmond has got a distinctiveness about him that makes you think there's a real energy there, and I want to go into his world.
So this is partly about how you're scheduling differently. Very briefly, BBC scheduled the recent Access documentary series, The Detectives, over 3 nights. Is that something that seemed to be a very effective thing to do, to create a bit of noise?
I thought it was really, really exciting, and really the channel loved that series. I'm absolutely right. So it was absolutely terrific. And that by making it into an event like that, I mean, lots of people have spoken about how it has all of this, the qualities of a box set, because you have you had those cliffhangers, but you also were able to engage with a subject which was so important, so well told, so beautifully crafted as a series. So it felt like a really special piece of television, and I think the scheduling was crucial.
So you might be thinking of trying to do more of that. Okay. Celia, what about you? What are you trying to do to kind of create noise and punch through? I'm thinking actually of you know, it's not obviously transmitted yet, but your Scientology project, which is just a huge thing. Just give us a bit of insight into that. Do you rue the day?
It's an amazing film, directed by Alex Gibney, Oscar-winning Alex Gibney. And it is a film that sort of reveals the story of the Church of Scientology. And it's brilliant. And it was at Sundance, and it's been fantastic. The issue lies when you have different defamation laws in the UK than you do in America. And not only that, but apparently in Northern Ireland, they also have different defamation laws from mainland UK. And then
so you can't transmit it everywhere else in the UK except Northern Ireland.
We've had to take rigorous legal advice, shall I paraphrase massively, to enable us to do that. And dare I say it, and I don't know who you put your hands together to in the Church of Scientology, but we're nearly there, I think, legally. But yes, it's an amazing film, and we co-produced it with HBO, and it was their highest rating documentary in a decade. So we have high hopes that it will work well for us. And it's extraordinary. I mean, you know, he's a masterful filmmaker. So it's going on Sky Atlantic as part of our cinema release feature documentary strand that we have. So we commission and fully fund and co-produce about 5 or 6 films a year for that.
Okay, but
channel.
just before we move on to Joe, just tell us very briefly, there's quite a difference in the spend, there's quite a shift in the spend, you're moving spend to Sky One.
So we have moved the commissioning money from Living onto Sky One. So Sky Arts and Sky Atlantic haven't been affected by this, but I think we felt that in a crowded market that it would be better to supersize Sky One and bring more commissioning money to that channel to bring more consistency to the schedule and more variety and less repeats. So we suddenly have quite a big cash injection into Sky One, which is really, really exciting. Some of that's going to be going into continuing our 8 o'clock strategy, but it does mean there's a lot more opportunities at 9 o'clock than there have been before, which is really, it's great.
Great. Joe, one of the interesting projects you're working on at the moment is the bullying project, which again is a tough subject for a channel like ITV to do. Is that with a view to doing something serious or creating a noise? What is the purpose behind that commission? Do you want to just
I don't think you set out sort of let's do something serious. You always think about what is going to create a noise and what are the sort of subjects that are stories of our time, which run a sort of gamut, as I've said, from something like 100-year-old drivers to Car Crash Britain caught on camera, which have that universal appeal, to a subject like bullying, which actually is quite smartly corralled into a very soft format, which is sending kids who've had bullying experiences, really bad bullying experiences, into their school with hidden cameras. The bullies are not identified on any individual basis, but the issue of bullying is highlighted through the footage, which then the families watch, then the schools watch, and then the class watches en masse. So it's
brave kids, it's amazing.
Very, very brave kids. It's a way of tackling these issues. The format had launched in Holland, and with a lot of bullying charities. We've got absolutely the sort of cream of the bullying charities here working with us, because the bona fides and the issues around compliance are incredibly important. But, and actually, it really helped stop the bullying culture in schools. And when television can be an agent for good and for change, like in Long Lost Family, where we are actually the agent to bring people together, we could be the agent here to help kids who are bullied. And it's extremely sensitive, and you know, we've had to handle it very, very carefully. Then that's a really exciting development of television. It's not just a passive watching voyeuristic thing. So it's a different way of using really, telly. Yeah. And we have to, obviously, you know, we can't just do these odd single films. Sadly, we don't have the sort of 10 o'clock slot that BBC Two has or the 10 o'clock slot that Channel 4 has. We have to launch really cold at 9 o'clock. We can't use our, I mean, people have heard me say this, but we can't use our sort of digital channels to migrate things because they're commercially discreet. So you are launching there at 9 o'clock, and you have to think, if we're doing bullying, how do we do that in a way that's going to create an impact? And that is about corralling that material into a soft format, a format that absolutely complements the idea behind what we want to do. So
it sounds really interesting project. I want to move on very briefly now to presenters. We've got 2 more clips to show. Celia, we're going to show a clip from the Mickey Flanagan show, De Tour de France. I know that you were keen to show this, and I guess it's because it's sort of using presenters in a rather new way, not as experts in a sense. So should we just play the clip and then you can tell us about it? So this is like the anti-presenter in a way. It looks lots of fun. But
Bradley Wiggins, watch your back.
Yeah. I mean, we've had massive success with what we call Funny Factual. I mean, Carl Pilkington is the highest rating series that Sky's ever done. And we love Funny Factual, and it's much harder to make than it looks, because if you just hire somebody and send them on the travelogue, it doesn't work. It's really sophisticated. It looks effortless television, but it's actually really hard to do that. And Mickey was genius. He's just perfect for us.
He's quite laddish as well, isn't he?
He's quite laddish. He's everyman. He doesn't put up with any bullshit, so he's really refreshingly honest. There's a brilliant sequence in the series when they go around an art gallery, which is really funny. And also, I think they're just having a great time. So there's something incredibly infectious about watching 2 genuine friends who adore each other having a blast. And so it was really successful. So we love Funny Factual, and we keep asking for it all the time. We always, yeah, except Mickey's so exhausted from having made that series. He's had to take a 9-month rest.
I should imagine he's quite exhausting as well.
He's utterly brilliant, and he was fantastic, and he loved it, and he'd never really done any factual before, and he was amazing. He did loads of press and everything, and so it was great. So yeah, so we love Funny Factual. But it does require a certain approach and skills. But we can talk people through that if you've got amazing talent.
And Joe, the authoritative presenter actually is a very important figure for you still, isn't it? And you've got a clip of Trevor McDonald that we're going to. Can we just have a quick look at that and then talk about it? Trevor McDonald's sort of in the DNA, isn't he, of ITV?
He is, but he's reinvented himself. He's so cool. He's got a young following. Girls who adore him, you know. I mean, the fan base of Ed Miliband, which was sort of weird, but, you know, Trevor is genuinely cool. And so he is in the DNA. It's incredibly important that you feel that there is somebody who sort of belongs to subjects. When we use authors, you feel that it's not so much that they're authoritative, but they are the right characters to embed in the plot of the unfolding drama. That's a sort of drama. It had its light moments. There are other presenters you can sort of embed, and you want it, and they add that extra layer, which makes it an enriching experience. I think The Mafia without Trevor McDonald might have belonged on another channel. Trevor being in the Mafia, a bit scared, you know, and you're living through his sort of emotional nervousness, but also his intelligent, quite laid-back manner of questioning, which gives them enough rope. He is sort of the perfect host, and what we do look for is the perfect host.
But unfortunately, you can't clone Trevor. It must be very difficult because you don't have those nursery slopes to kind of find new presenters.
It is, but I mean, you know, we've got fantastic presenters. You know, Billy Connolly, who else could have done death other than Billy Connolly and made that funny factual but moving, poignant factual? Or Joanna Lumley, or a new series that you hear it here first with Stephen Fry, going right through Central America, from the border of Mexico right through Central America, which will have really great funny moments but enriching and rewarding moments as well. So we've got a roster of great talent both for 9 o'clock and pre-Watershed, you know. But it's important, and you know, what we have to do is to take familiar people, perhaps, and put them in unfamiliar situations. So we've got a series with Davina McCall called Going to Extremes, which is, you know, hot, cold, whatever the extremes are. You can tell I'm not very good at geography. And it's, so, you know, it's Davina doing something different. Or when we bring in new presenters like Alexander Armstrong, who I think has got a sort of Palin-esque quality, doing sort of Land of the Midnight Sun. He's genuinely an engaging, funny, warm presenter. And that's sort of, gradually you bring in different flavours, but you're right, we have to launch them cold. They have to feel that they're adding something and that they are the perfect way to mediate the content and to bring, and it's that synergy. I mean, obviously we do that with perspectives in our art strand. Think carefully about the synergy between the author and the subject. But,
thank you. Nick, you're not thinking about starting using presenters anytime soon?
Thinking about, I mean, in some ways it is a bit, in some ways it's a bit trickier in Channel 4 documentaries, because I think what people look for from our documentaries is to be dropped in and immersed in that world themselves. It's one of the reasons why The Rig has been so successful on Channel 4, because you feel you're dropped in that world and you are there working out that world for yourself. But having said that, and not having your hand held by a presenter through the experience, having said that, would I like to have one or two people who could be on-screen documentary makers? Probably wouldn't go for the same sort of people as the other channels, but I do understand there are definitely stories where there is a value in having somebody who can have a presence on screen and pull more out of a story and make a story more relatable. One of the things that I worked with Louis Theroux for 6 years at the BBC, and so in some ways he's set quite a big benchmark, and that may inhibit me a little with taking on other on-screen talent. Having said that, we are looking.
You used Bear on the island
yes.
I mean,
yes.
he's not really there, but embedded in a way. I mean, I'm not suggesting he's in a hotel somewhere.
Yeah, no, there are great.
It's a good point.
Great.
Sorry.
Grayson Perry is very successful from our arts department, but it is true from the documentaries department. We don't have many people on screen. I wouldn't mind if we had just one or two.
Can I just say something? The other way of thinking about talent is to immerse them in a format. You know, there's something coming up on ITV called Flock Stars, and it's a sort of celebrity one man and his dog, but it's a different way of using celebrities. So there isn't just one avenue.
I think there's also the thing, but with BBC Two in particular, that a presenter can take you to, with Sue Perkins when she went to the Mekong, to bring a huge audience to South Asian, the whole Southeast Asian geopolitical system and what's happening with, with the building of the dams, and over 3 million people watching that.
It's a very personal journey,
absolutely.
Wasn't it? Almost not so much a presenter as
someone who
traveller.
was absolutely travelling, and I think that the authenticity of her journey, she wasn't just someone in a car, air-conditioned car, who goes somewhere for 2 weeks and then comes home. She was there, and she was right in the centre of that. So just,
Nick mentioned Louis Theroux. You better watch out, hadn't you?
I think so.
Yeah. So would you fight to keep him?
Oh, God, no. I think Louis has developed into... I mean, he's always been an extraordinary programme maker, but I watched the last series with utter awe at his... And I think that he has a unique ability to... He's a documentary maker in the middle of these most, powerful situations, and has his ability to be able to interview, to cajole, to sort of gently take us somewhere. And he's developed into someone who's unique, I think, on telly.
He has been quoted as saying that, he had to persuade the BBC to let him do these difficult topics. Would you presumably be happy to see him continue doing that?
I'll be fighting the good fight for him.
In a way, actually, in some ways, that Tribe programme, if some of you go see it, it expresses slightly the difference between the channels in the way that it's more BBC to put, and at the moment Kate Humble's doing something in that kind of space, that Bruce Parry would go into that kind of space, but the idea that that we make a series which has got exactly the same values that we make when we make The Family, and when Channel 4 made The Family and for Channel 4, but take those documentary techniques and apply it to a rural community in Ethiopia, feels like it's less mediated, and that feels a very Channel 4 thing to be doing.
Thanks. Okay, well, I've got one last question for everybody, and then we'll take questions from the floor, so do have your questions ready. The sort of final thing I really want to talk about is whether or not you think that you are all doing a good job of representing sort of modern, diverse Britain. Is there a lot more work to do, and are you sort of feeling that you're moving in the right direction? Sky, for instance, has made a lot of comments about improving its diversity. Likewise, various projects across the broadcasters to try and improve diversity on and off screen, and also just sometimes feel more modern. Do you think that that's a fair criticism, and that there's a lot of work still to be done?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've all been talking about diversity for eons, and I'm just really glad to work for a broadcaster that just said enough, let's just do it.
Get on with it.
Let's just get on it. We've got really, quite difficult targets,
but are they achievable?
We believe in them, and we're going to do it. And we've just decided, and I think that's the power of a broadcaster. If you decide you want to set the agenda in the industry, we can do that, and we really want to do that. So we have everything we commission post 2015 has to have 20% on-screen representation, and also, more importantly, all the indies we work with, we are expecting them to have a BAME person on their team in a senior position, and we will be much more favourable to indies that succeeded in doing that, shall I say.
Thank you. Patrick, it seems a bit unfair to be levelling this at you before you've even started the job, but, the BBC does have that reputation as, hideously white, hideously middle class, very public school, all those things. How much are you going to embrace that?
I think that across the board that there needs to be a much greater representation of the audience on television. I think that we've got to try much, much harder. I think that in terms of talent, that when I was at Boundless, well, I'm still at Boundless, but we've tried to develop schemes in order to bring more people into it is a hideously white culture in terms of the television making
the industry generally.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so what we have to do is find ways of bringing people through. And I used to run a new talent scheme, new documentary makers talent scheme 10 years ago for Channel 4, and there were more BAME applicants then than we had for a job for APs now. And that was an extraordinary thing, that it's got worse in the last 2 years, not better. And so that's something that we've got to, and we are making, forward progress, but it's absolutely something that we've got to look at more.
Long way to go, Jo, do you think?
I think it's incredibly important. Of course, it's always going to be a journey, but it's incredibly important to make programmes with people from a rich range of backgrounds and make programmes that speak to the whole nation. Otherwise, how do you attract those mass viewers? It's incredible. It should have been part of what we were doing years ago. I can't believe it's taken this long, but thank goodness it has. We've got our new commissioning person starting on Monday. We're incredibly excited, but it's got to be an ongoing, constant basis where actually every programme you make is reflecting the wider world. It's sort of so obvious, and yet somehow it's sad that it needed all these initiatives. Thank goodness we've got those initiatives in place, and I think hopefully the content and the talent base will reflect those new initiatives.
Nick, you can...
Agreeing with what's said, really, it's just going to make better telly if we better reflect society. But picking up particularly what Patrick said, I think actually particular attention to those the doors that are opening to encourage people to start a career in the industry and to make sure that it feels as open as possible to a wide range of people. Actually, social diversity as well as BAME. We need to get as many people thinking that television might be for them and that they might have something to bring to the industry and do have lots to bring to the industry as possible. And that'll make telly better and that'll be better for all of us.
And also, it's up to you guys as well. I mean, all the production companies in here, we're all in this together. And it's getting quite boring from us talking to indies going, well, we can't find anybody. And we're just like, well, find somebody. They're out there. Find somebody, train them, promote them,
And that means taking chances, actually, and doesn't it? And having different ways of assessing what talent is. And,
get another exec on board. Enable yourself to deliver great television and do this as well. It's, we're doing it, and we just need everybody to join in with us.
I think one of the enduring successes of The Apprentice that we make at Boundless is the fact that it's always had it's always attracted a very, very diverse group of people to apply. And then we've always chosen the best, however many applicants, and then the audience sees themselves on the television and then applies again.
So of course, that's there is a gain. It's no accident that something like Gogglebox, which is
feels a modern, they feel modern shows. I mean, the Gogglebox.
It's about the modernity of the world. We've got a little show going out called Big Box, Little Box. I urge you to watch episode 2. It's cute. On Thursday night. It's a modern show in terms of the cast as well as sort of trialling modern products.
So there's a benefit for everyone if everybody can see themselves on the screen. Okay, well, thank you very much for that. Questions. There's a question here. If you could just wait for the microphone to appear, and then I'll try... I can just about see you up there. Is there anybody likely to ask a question up there? Shout now. You might have to wave a bit because the lights are a bit bright. Okay.
Thank you very much. There's been a little bit of a Little Englander feeling about your discussion this morning, and documentaries about Norfolk farmers and saving individual lives and the hunted, and presenters, which is good, but an awful lot of presenter documentaries are a little bit self-indulgent. I would like to hear what the plans of the broadcasters are to reflect the big subjects, like overpopulation, like the failure of the United Nations Right to Protect program, like the collapse of the Westphalian system of nations. These huge problems, the plan to eliminate poverty by 2030, I don't see any of that coming up, and I know they're very difficult subjects to make, but I wonder what you as commissioning editors feel that we as companies can bring to you on these really big global projects.
You're sort of specifically saying you think this is something that should be done in the documentary context,
Absolutely.
as opposed to current affairs, where, of course, a lot of issues are tackled.
It's bigger than news. It's longer than news.
But it's not just news, is it?
It's not just news. It's big shifts in the tectonic plates of our society globally. And it's not being covered by television.
Okay, Celia.
Well, I'm really pleased to tell you that we've actually got 2 feature-length documentaries tackling this subject. How to Change the World is at screening here at Sheffield now. I urge everybody to go and see it. It's about the people who started off Greenpeace, and it's fantastic and echoes loudly now as we face the current crisis. And then we've got another film, oh God, it's been announced, but anyway, called 10 Billion, which is actually looking at overpopulation, drought, migration, poverty migration, food migration, all those issues, weather, climate, the whole thing, and a holistic thing, which is a very challenging film. And basically, we're all doomed. But yes, I mean, and you might think for something like Sky, which is, obviously a commercial organisation, we might not tackle that subject, but actually Sky's really serious about the environment. We have Europe's only carbon neutral studio facility. We're not allowed any bins at work, so we have to put everything in recycling, from that minute level. So actually, Sky, oddly, is open to environmental issue things. Obviously, we have Sky News, so that sort of does soak up quite a lot of that territory in terms of covering the G8 and things like that. So really, it's in our feature documentary area that's probably your best bet, or, this kind of things that Ross Kemp can cover in his own style. So yes.
Or you land on particular stories. You know, you could land like with Hunter of the South Seas, Will Millard being in the Southern Oceans and seeing the consequences of overfishing, but you're seeing it from the point of view of one particular family.
Okay, do you two think that is it a fair criticism in a way?
I think we are looking. I tell you what there is. There's quite a bar in finding a way in that feels fresh, thought-provoking, that makes you sit up. There was a kind of authored essay film, things that are a very long title, things that are true about race, but you wouldn't say. Actually, I've probably not got the title quite right.
Things on to say about race that are true.
Yes, things that are true. Which felt like a fresh angle on a subject that made people sit up and listen, and it attracted a big audience. There's a long documentary on at 9 o'clock on Channel 4. Equally, sometimes we will look at those subjects and think, what is a different way to make people think about the changes that happen? We did a programme, it was a couple of years ago, Blackout, which was about what would happen if the lights went out on Britain for 6 or 7 days. But we are looking for something either in the thought that feels it really makes you sit up and you haven't quite heard it like this before, or something in the form that also that grabs attention. I would say it can't just quite feel like it would be an editorial in The Guardian. You've got to find a creative way of bringing it to us, then we're open.
Yeah, if it feels didactic, it just doesn't...
you can't just say, wag your finger really and say, we're not doing it. I think for all commissioners, no subject really is out of bounds. We're not an issue channel particularly, but as you've seen, we've got lots of films that tackle issues through a very accessible way. It's about how you tell them. And if you're a mass market entertainment and drama channel primarily, it's about coming up with the shape of the programme that's going to feel it belongs to a mainstream channel like ITV and not sit out like a sore thumb or do, 800,000 at 9 o'clock on ITV1 where, which would be a failure for all of us.
Thank you. Yes, here a question. Where's our microphone?
I just wanted to return to the subject of finding presenters who are more representative and more diverse, which I totally, we are all in accordance with, of course. Celia says it's up to us to look out there and find them. Now, I mean, if I had a penny, maybe a pound, for every time I've been asked if I could get one of about 3 presenters on a show, all of them have been mentioned during our discussion today, I'd be able to give up television production entirely. I mean, don't you think that it is time that the broadcasters took a few more risks?
Yeah, I do, and I'm sure we all are. I mean, we're launching a relatively new talent called Patrick Irie. He's an amazing natural history guy. And he's very non-known. He's done a few things and we've invested in a really, really high-end natural history series with him. So we will, absolutely will. It's just finding the talent that stand out.
Yeah. What about you, Patrick? Do you think you'll be prepared to take risks with presenters?
I think that, I mean, that you have to, you've got to set the bar high in terms of your editorial ambition, but at the same time, you've got to find those voices, and they don't just arrive, they don't just make their first series and they think, oh, that's 9 o'clock sewn up, we've just found this new person. They need to be grown, so we've got to take risks, we've got to grow new talent, definitely.
Well, a great idea. I mean, 50 Ways to Kill Your Mammy, the presenter of that is not known in the UK at all. Never done any telly at all, and now it's one of our most successful formats sold in 125 territories or something, so it's entirely possible to do it.
It's a good point and worth continuing to take risks. Could we have the question there, please? Thank you.
Hi. When it comes to pitching, I've been told that taster tapes are worth their weight in gold, as opposed to reading reams and reams and reams of information. What's the best kind of taster or pitch you've ever had that's kind of outside the box?
Ooh. Anything springs immediately to mind? I mean, it's so much easier to make taster tapes today than it was 10 years ago, even.
I can talk about 50 Ways. 50 Ways to Kill Your Mammy is a Sky One show. The talent, Baz, we really liked, and we've been talking to him for about 2 years and couldn't find the idea, and then he just sent in a bit of footage of him and his mum, and we all went, that's the idea, and it was commissioned you know, within 5 days or something, because it was just such a clear proposition. And it was just him and his mum in his kitchen. So it wasn't like an all singing, all dancing, super expensive, flashy edited thing. But equally, I'm sure we've all been sent amazing reels. We just kind of, it does speak loudly.
We got sent something, it was a while ago actually, a film that on the surface I don't think we'd ever have done, called Strictly Kosher, but they sent in a taster tape, ITV Studios, and the characters were so amazing. It went to series and went to second series, you know, so it can help.
At risk of producing an avalanche of takes, what happened to me actually in this room last year is somebody at the end was asking and saying, actually, Nick, I think I've got exactly what you're looking for. So I did say, I'll have a chat with you outside. Come and see me outside. So I spoke to him and he said it was something, he hadn't actually made any programmes before. He'd done some stuff for festivals, and he'd done some commercial videos, and I spoke to quite a few people outside, and I saw him, and we had an exchange. We probably talked for 2 or 3 minutes, and I said, "Send me something then." Anyway, well, actually, to his credit, nothing arrived for about a month, and then a taster came through into my inbox. Actually, the perfect thing of it, it was only 120 seconds long. It was a really, really, really good taster. And we are in the business of making a film from that.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, that's a nice...
Actually, I've also had fantastic tasters that have been pulled off YouTube. And you kind of go, you've made an entire programme from other people's clips on YouTube, so therefore, why is this original? Why is this anything? And so it is,
so any old taster would
can go the other way too.
But don't send screeds either. I don't think, you know, it's not an either or. It's either a taster or a paragraph, you know, because screeds don't help you and they don't help the commissioner. You know, you can summarise that idea very simply in 2 or 3 lines.
And if you can't summarise it, it probably won't make a big hit.
What is true, though, is if it's going to make a bridge, if it's going to come from nowhere and it's going to come into any of our inboxes, or you're going to hand us it, it's got to be quite exceptional. So the bar is quite high, but yes, I would say a brilliant taster can allow you to reach much further than a paragraph.
Thank you. Just final questions? Any other questions? Yes, just here. There's 2 people side by side. Do you want to both ask your questions and then we can try to answer them together?
So just on the back of what that lady was saying, we've got a series. So what sort of format would you like that in? Because obviously a paragraph is not quite enough for a series.
Do you mean you want a paragraph for every episode in the series?
You've already made it.
I'm asking you what you want, actually. So you know we've got everything for you. We could just put it into the format that suits you. So I'm just asking what it is.
So you've already shot it, you mean?
No, we've shot a teaser and we've got the paragraphs describing.
I think it's about what's the best way to sell the idea in a way that doesn't mean masses of pieces of paper, and you know, it can be a summary and then a summary of the episodes, because in that selling in a very crisp and lucid way, you're having to corral your ideas. We get it much more quickly and we can get back to you and we can say, we'll give you a bit more money to do a taste or whatever. Further
we can always ask you for more.
The really good idea will actually, the really good idea, you probably can reduce to a sentence or 2. And remember, the audience who are going to watch it on telly when it goes out are only going to read a sentence or 2. So you should be able to write something quite simple about it, even if it's a long series, that makes you think, actually, I want to watch that. And so even if it's big, you should be able to write something quite concise that encapsulates
and
what's
think
about.
the title as well.
No, it's fine. Okay, I'm just going to take the last question because we don't want to run over from the lady here.
Hi, thanks for that. There was quite a lot of talk about, I think you call it constructed factual and funny factual, presenter-led documentaries, and how much airtime does that have compared to the sort of single documentaries that you see here at the DocFest, which is usually not presenter-led or voice-over-led? Or
okay, so
how much hours do you actually commission a year?
So I try and put that into a sort of very simple to answer question, which is, you know, is there a huge disparity between the 2?
Yes, there is. I think most broadcasters do more series than they do single films. On Sky Arts, we do Seasons, and that's really the home of most of our single docs, apart from our cinema release Feature Strategy on Atlantic. But most broadcasters, I spend a lot of time turning down single films. It's just... Oh, I don't know.
It's not a law.
I suppose, yeah, it's probably hard to say, but I mean, you're looking for more single films,
yeah, we'd probably, I'm guessing, but 30, 40 singles across a year. We're quite committed to singles. We have quite a lot of singles. We have about 10 first cuts, plus Cutting Edge, plus 10 o'clock documentaries. We have quite a lot of single documentaries. We still have more, a lot more that goes out in the series. But we are definitely interested in single documentaries.
And Jo?
I think they have to be exceptional, noisy event pieces that can hold their own at 9 o'clock. We have a few at 10:35, but really what we're looking for is those pieces at 9 o'clock. In the end, the series have more impact. Major broadcasters are looking for that returnability, but obviously if you have an exceptional piece that's marking an anniversary or a story of our times, why now? 100-year-old drivers, pensioners behind bars. Yeah, you need big titles on a big commercial network.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just
I mean, in
last
terms of
point.
singles, so BBC One, there's Baby P that was Henry Singer's film that was out last year. Ollie Lambert's making a film about the historical sex abuse victims at the moment, which is a big 90-minute documentary. BBC Two, there's still a massive appetite for the best directors to make their best single films.
But you're also going to be charged with trying to get more returning, big volume returning series,
but it's a
aren't
mixed
you?
economy. You've got to have those standout singles.
So you're not going to give up on the single
And
film?
the singles that feel as though they can sort of market themselves, you know what I mean? That aren't going to just slip away unnoticed, so that they do feel special. They're gems in your schedule.
Well, that's a nice place to end on, the idea of gems in the schedule, which is, I'm sure, what we're all looking for. It's been very interesting, I hope, to hear everybody's points of view, and I'd just like to thank Nick Mirsky, Jo Clinton-Davies, Patrick Holland and Celia Taylor.